Live early. Welcome everybody to UFO Man Live. My name is Tim or UFO Man. Tonight I have two very special guests, Rob Heatherly and Shannon Scott from Military Witnesses to UAP. Welcome guys.
Thank you for having us, Tim.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. I've had Rob on here before and I've had Shannon on here one other time. But tonight we're going to dig deep into some issues that they are speaking about on their channel. But before we do that, I want to mention a fundraiser that Shannon Scott, Rob Heatherly, and Lou Elizondo formed. This is it. Shannon Scott's annual Vets and Vets for Wounded Vets and Pets fundraiser. Shannon, if you would put the link in the chat, if
Sure
anybody's interested in donating to this fundraiser, the link will be in the chat. Shannon's going to tell you a little bit about it real quick, and then we'll get into our UFO topics. Okay, Shannon, take it away.
Well, thanks, Tim. Where do I start? First, I want to say thank you for having us on your show. We're very honored. And secondly, I'd like to tell everybody that I am very honored that Lou Elizondo and my best friend, Rob Heatherly, have named this charity after me. I'm very humbled, and I am amazed and blown away every time I wake up and I realize this is actually happening. Where can I go from here? There's actually three different charities in this charity that was named after me. Wow. Mine is the Wounded Warrior Project, and I chose them because when I was having a hard time dealing with the VA, and this is pre-Trump administration, the Wounded Warrior was an advocate for me and my family, and they assisted in me getting my benefits. So I'm very grateful for them. Um, Go ahead and I'll Lou's not here with us right now. You just never know when he'll pop in, but I'll go ahead and talk about his, and I'll let Rob talk about his. Lou Elizondo, his charity is St. Francis Humane Society in Buffalo, Wyoming. Did I get that right, Rob?
It's a no-kill animal shelter. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, right. Okay. The floor
They've
is
helped.
yours.
They've helped him and a lot of the locals there with their animals and stuff, and he felt that was an extremely worthy endeavor. And also, he's interacted somewhere with pinups for vets that is going to get. It's 45% for Wounded Warrior. It's going to be 35% for the pinups for vets, and 20% for St. Francis. Pinups for vets sells calendars of service women that's very classy. Um, it pays for their expenses to go and visit wounded warriors in the hospitals and things that are recovering, and helps donate to the families and whatever they need. They've got kind of a women's organization where they volunteered to, anybody that's been driving distance to go help them out. So um, they're a small charity. They don't have a lot of exposure yet to anybody. If somebody's quick on the internet, it's pinups for vets, not pets. Pinups for vets. If we can pop a link in the chat, that'd be great. I'm in the process of setting up a web page for the charity that'll have a pay button that'll automatically put it through to the three charities and kick back a 100% donation to be tax deductible. For now, we have the link that's 100% to Wounded Warrior Project until we get the web page up and running, which I hope to have that done by the end of next week. And then we're going to kick this into high gear with Lou set up all-star lineup, which from what I hear, there's a lot of big players that will be showing up to play. Obviously, it's a worthy cause, and a lot of them are veterans themselves or family members or friends that they support their constituents. So hoping, like with Gary Nolan's interview, it goes across party lines and keep the politics out of it. It's a worthy cause, and that's all that matters. Across party lines.
And all three of us on the panel are disabled American veterans. So we are all backing this project. And I want to show this is supposedly, according to Shannon, going to be a new patch. So here it is.
Well, I'd like to go ahead and just say that the idea of a patch was actually from Lou Elizondo, and I'm just going to make it happen. The other thing I'm going to make happen is I'm going to do stickers in this too. I've had people request that we do stickers. So we're going to do that. So patches and stickers. So
yes, and that was the way I was helping out the project, by designing the patch and the flyers. So,
but Tim, I want to thank you very much in public. I've thanked you many times before. I'll say it here in front of everybody that I am very appreciative of the hard work you did, and Lou loves your work. I won't speak for Rob. I'll let him do it. But Lou told me that he loves it and he wants patches. So that's my job. I'm going to be making patches.
cool.
Once I get the patches done, boom, right there on hats. If you have a jacket, on jacket. I have a service dog. It's going to be on his working vest. So
that's really
it's going to
cool.
be everywhere.
So if anybody's interested in patches, I'm sure you can get a hold of them through Shannon Scott or Rob Heatherly at their channel. So go over to Military Witnesses at UAP, to UAP, and I'm sure they'll put the information in their description when it's available. Okay, tonight we're going to be talking about some interesting things. First off, I want to bring up an article from NASA. NASA astronomers discover a space structure of unknown origin larger than the Milky Way galaxy, and this is what it looks like. It looks like the segments of an orange. It has centrifugal rings all through it. Now, this is not necessarily the only one of its kind. They have actually discovered other ones, but not as large as this one. According to this, where is it? According to radio astronomer Barbel Korobalski of the Australian Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation in Sydney, Australia, it is reminiscent of a Fabergé egg or a soap bubble. The outer circle measures more than 1 million light years in diameter, 10 times the diameter of the Milky Way, with a series of smaller rings inside it. Now, I read further into that article, and the article stated that they thought it might be of alien origin, some type of alien construct. Not necessarily structural, but more of a phenomenon that was created or formed through an alien civilization. What do you think, Rob?
Well, I read the article and it said that you could only see it in the radio spectrum, so it's very low frequency radio waves that construct it. So whatever's emanating it, there's something generating, basically broadcasting from the center that creates it. It's electromagnetic nature. Yeah, it's electromagnetic in nature, but with all the mass that it contains, I'd even not go so far. If you have jellyfish or plankton in the ocean, Lou talked about life being at different scales, and we're right in the middle of it. Could we be looking at another type of life form? We have no idea, but we can't rule it out because we don't know what defines life. And as we're finding out with some of the esoteric type beings that may exist, that they aren't even sure if they have a physical aspect to them or not. So they could be pure energy, in which case there's no reason to think that those couldn't be some kind of a life form or a artifact from a form of life.
Right. And they're unsure at this point as to what it is. And they have theories, but they have no way to prove what it is. I do have another picture that was recently released by NASA as the first images of an exoplanet. And here it is. These are first images of exoplanet HIP 65426b. This was taken by the James Webb Telescope. Take a look at this. It's the first one of its kind. So I find that really unique. What do you think, Rob? It shows the different color spectrums there.
I don't know. Are they? We've got proto suns where they see them inside those nebulas and things, but yeah, this is the first time they've shown proto planets forming, which is fascinating because James Webb, I think, is going to show us. Well, I know it's going to show us a lot of tremendous things. That there's going to be a whole new era of astronomers and science that are going to come from this that they never even knew existed, like what you just showed with the that giant radio frequency.
With that,
yeah, they don't even have a clue where to start with the physics to try and describe that. So there's going to open up a whole nother field, multiple fields of physics and astronomy and things, and I think it's going to help infuse some excitement back into the field where people will actually want to start going out and getting the education to do that kind of work again. They've had SETI and things that were a big flop and a waste of money. These things are bearing good fruit already. If they can do this with James Webb and they've got higher aspect ratio satellites in the works already that are larger than this one and more powerful, the implications are just endless. I think, like Lou had said, Gary Nolan has the equipment to see the scale below us with how deep he's probing into where we can actually see atomic structures. This is going to allow us to see the next scale up. And these 5 images you showed of those radio emanations, are we starting to see what's at the next scale that we're just starting to get clarity on? And we have to remember, they're going to filter what they don't understand from the public until they do understand it enough. They're not releasing something that's going to be so profound, it's going to rock everybody's socks off, literally. So they're showing us the mundane stuff, and they're still, I'm sure, looking at the really freaky stuff, because when they got it up and running, there would have to be high priority targets to look at, and I would think one of them would be that comet that's coming into our solar system to get a good look at. So I'm waiting to hear on that one too,
and see how close it actually passes by Earth, actually, and how much impact it may make on our gravitational field.
Yeah.
Okay, going into another interesting subject here, and I brought this up to the guys probably 30 minutes ago. So they've read the article, so it's something that's been floating around YouTube for a while. But I had an interview with a nice lady by the name of Brittany Barbieri 3 weeks ago, and she made a mention of an encounter off the California coast near Catalina Island of some divers coming across 3 alien-like beings underwater with what appeared to be helmets. And I wanted to refer to the Russian sighting, which was here. Russian Navy divers encountered aquatic beings at Lake Baikal. And here we go. Located in southeastern Siberia toward Mongolia's border sits the planet's oldest and deepest lake. Nearly 1/4 of Earth's fresh water is contained here. Astonishing depths of over 5,000 feet have been measured in certain areas. That's pretty deep. What do you think about that?
That place,
Yeah, that's deep.
They've also had a lot of sightings of craft going in and out of that as well.
Right. They have sensor systems monitoring the lake currently, from what I understand, but they're not sending divers down, and this is why.
Yeah,
For
that'd be a good
centuries,
deterrent.
For centuries, Lake Baikal has been home to a plethora of unexplained phenomena. Locals claim countless peculiar UFO encounters frequently occur within this remote region of Russia. Some theorize an extraterrestrial base is lurking beneath the picturesque exterior. One of the most bizarre reports occurred in '82 during a routine Soviet military training dive. While navigating the foreboding aquatic realm, Navy personnel noticed anomalous figures swimming nearby. This is kind of what they look like. Artist rendering of it. Kind of reminds me of the helmets from Captain Nemo, the movie.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead, Rob.
Oh, there's also, if they weren't helmets, it'd be like jellyfish even. But
right.
Yeah, it could have an organic component to where like they have their own natural rebreathers. We just don't know what we don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Can't rule that out.
It says here, perplexed, they watch in bewilderment as several curious creatures approach them. Despite being stationed at a depth of over 164 feet, these humanoids wore no modern equipment. Each donned tight-fitting metallic suits complete with a helmet-like apparatus completely covering their heads. Upon closer inspection, troopers noticed the aliens were nearly 10 feet tall. However, the colossal loch dwellers soon disappeared back into the murky abyss. Following this eerie run-in, the intrigued commander ordered his recruits to capture a sebaceous alien. 7 scuba divers entered the glacial lake and began their harrowing descent. Soon after navigating an elevator of declining temperatures, multiple entities emerged. One frogman attempted to catch the unearthly specimen in a large net. And again, this is what they look like.
Yeah, I got my hats off to the special forces of Russia to have the cojones to try and capture one of those things. That just, I don't know if it's stupidity or bravery or a little of both. Probably a little of both, I'd say.
Right. A lot of bad things happened to him. At that moment, all hell broke loose from the unsuspecting flotilla group. Suddenly, the non humans fought back by shooting intense sonar waves. Powerful force rendered every crew member unconscious and rapidly propelled them to the surface. Catapulting upwards from extreme depths can have devastating effects on our bodies, resulting in a condition often called the bends. Three of the squadron were seriously injured but did not succumb to this affliction. The remaining fellows needed immediate transfer to a decompression chamber. But what the problem was is unfortunately there was only one recompression chamber in the region. It was designed for two people at a time. Out of sheer desperation, four men entered simultaneously in an attempt to save their lives. Tragically, this last ditch effort did not go as planned. Three individuals perished as a result of their superior's hasty decision. Those who survived the terrifying ordeal would be left with life altering disabilities. Um, the KGB has since quarantined Lake Baikal, and they only allow surface and subsurface monitoring with sensors. They will not allow divers into the lake, but they are still having major sightings in regards to Lake Baikal. Rob?
I've heard that they've put some just in the last couple of years. They put some really huge sensors. I think some that are radio telescopes or something, because it's isolated so deep that, like with the Mariana Trench, it cuts out a lot of chatter you would pick up toward the surface. And we don't know if there's underground passages that could lead deeper into the Earth's core or crust anyway,
Right, we don't
or
know.
into
And
pockets of don't know, what we're sitting on top of, but it looks to us that they exist at the bottom of the sea or underneath it. We've seen them go into volcanoes, active volcanoes, freshwater lakes like at Peru. So,
right.
they may be networked through underground passages and tunnels throughout the planet.
Yeah, so what do you think, Shannon?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. As a Navy investigator, um, retired, this story unfortunately has many holes. The chain of custody of the story, basically, who are we hearing it from? Any type of correlation between maybe a name. Um, there are several questions an investigator has: who, what, when, where, why, and how. And I have about half of that. I don't have the specific date. We know what year. We know what location. But the facts of the matter of this case, I would have, it's just speculative. I'd like to
Uh,
see more
more
facts come out
chain,
on
more
it.
chain of custody, right? I do,
Mhm.
I do agree, but I originally blew this story off as fantasy until Brittany Barbieri came up with the encounter outside of Catalina Island, and with all the UAP activity by Catalina Island, I was really inspired by the Russian story because now you have two stories in two different parts of the world, which corroborate each other. Whether you have the detailed chain of custody or not, it still
Mhm.
is the same thing that they saw in two different spots
Yeah.
from two different
On
locations
top,
from people that didn't even know each other.
right, Tim. Also, there's a third case, and we've heard this several stories that there are some search and rescue swimmers who jump off the helos to get these dummy ordinances, recover them, and they too have experienced some unknown phenomenon, which would probably correlate as a third story. And I heard that story actually happened twice. Is that right,
Hmm.
there, Rob? So that's
Yeah, they were
just
this
that gives me chill bumps.
It was
That's
over
really
the Puerto
cool.
Rican Trench where they were the size of a small island that came up. That terrifies me to have been one of the divers
Mhm.
or the helicopter pilots to look down and see something that large coming out of the depths. It could have swallowed the helicopter without even. It could have pulled it down without even without any
Mhm.
effort. I mean that's completely out of control of your your fate at that point. And I think, like you said, given that we've got a second correlating story, that makes it worth drilling down into to investigate it further and see if we can find some further answers on those. There's a lot of stuff out on the internet, and we know that they've put out 75 years of disinformation. So there might be credible information mixed in to make it look not credible. And maybe we can sort some of that out.
Or vice versa. In some cases, it may make it look credible when it isn't. So I intend to dig more into it. And Rob, if you could as well, we could get back together on another live stream and talk more in depth about it. But that is something I needed to bring up because of Brittany Barbieri. I do have a video I would like to play. It's Tim Burchett talking briefly and addressing the idea that we do not control our airspace. Things are flying around with impunity, and he really feels that even though it looks like transparency is moving forward, he feels that it's a cover-up. And here we go.
In the hearing, I believe they said we had 14 near misses. Why is that not a headline? Why are people not asking more questions about what the heck is going on?
The United States Congress is now demanding answers on unidentified aerial phenomena. We've come here today to speak to one politician who's prepared to say he thinks it's a cover-up.
A good lawyer one time told me the truth is the best defense, and dadgummit, that's the truth. The cover-up is real. I'll just say I've been briefed by people who are in the know, and it's very telling what they're telling me. And I've talked to Navy pilots, have absolutely nothing to gain by telling me information. They showed me photographs of things that were very unusual, and in fact, there's something in our airspace that we do not control, and that ought to be very concerning.
Shortly after our interview, the congressman showed me in confidence the photographs he was talking about. If authentic, they're extraordinary. They are very clear Polaroid images of a hovering, metallic flying saucer. The former head of the Pentagon's UFO investigation program, Luis Elizondo, he said publicly that he thinks the US government is in possession of exotic material. Other people have been more candid. Other insiders have suggested that the United States is in possession of craft, non-human technology.
Right.
What do you think?
I think we've got some craft somewhere. I think that I've talked to too many people that have seen and held this so-called foreign material. And I don't think it's a Chinese technology. I don't think it's a Russian technology. Russian technology with Putin's ego. He'd land a dadgum UFO on the front steps of the White House, probably get out and ride a unicorn bare-chested and wrestle Joe Biden and get back in it and head back to Mother Russia. And China would own us. So I think that's out of the question. I think that and I think there's something we are trying to reverse engineer, but the problem is it's so advanced they can't reverse engineer it to the point of where they could actually build this craft. I go out every night and I look at the stars, and some of those stars, the actual light from those stars left that star before the time of Christ. I mean, that's mind-boggling to me. And to think that in the vastness of God's creation that we are the best He can do, I just don't buy that.
So what do you think about that, guys? Rob?
Yeah, it's like Gary Nolan was saying that with the new legislation, they're going to go back clear to 1947. They want to know the names of the people that worked in disinformation and programs, who they are, what their names are, what the programs' names are. So they want to know it all in Congress. So yeah, they're going to have immunity, but they're probably at some point are going to need amnesty for some to come forward because they probably don't want prosecuted for if some of it was illegal.
Right.
So, yeah.
Shannon, what do you think? You're muted.
I think before you know it, guys, things are going to come to pass. 2022 is going to be the biggest year ever. That's my prediction. Everything's just falling in line. There's 3D chess going on behind the scenes, and it has to be unfold a certain way. It can't be unfold. It can't be forced either. It's just, and there's times. There has to be certain things have to happen during certain times in order for certain things to happen. And you're going to find out my prediction. If I was a betting man, this year is the year.
I also think early 2023 might also be the year. The reason is because I've heard and I've read recently that the Pentagon has in its possession over 100 UFO videos that they're working on declassifying to release publicly. So that's really interesting. So hopefully that will happen within the next couple of years. Now, I remember when I did the interview with Lou Elizondo, he mentioned that it might be 5 years because 5 years would give it enough time to make a significant amount of change because of the red tape in government and how many steps you have to take to declassify things. It isn't just one step by saying, okay, it's declassified. It's not like that. People got to talk to people. There are different levels of classification. It takes a long time. So once this gets done, then we should be able to receive some footage. Now, I do have a piece of footage tonight that was released recently through the Freedom of Information Act from to the Drive or the War Zone online. And it's from the USS Zumwalt, which is supposedly one of our most advanced, I think it's a destroyer or a warship. And there were 6 of these flying in formation around the ship in 2019. Check it out.
This is USS Zumwalt at approximately 0335 Zulu on April 24, 2019, while conducting routine operations 17 nautical miles off the coast of Camp Pendleton in international waters. At least 6 unknown UASs made multiple flyovers and circle patterns around the ships, operating at various altitudes between 300 and 1,000 feet. All appeared to fly consistent patterns, northwest, east, south, without alteration of course, speed, and altitude. No weapons were observed. This is USS Zumwalt at approximately 0335 Zulu on April 24, 2019, while conducting routine operations 17 nautical miles off the coast of Camp Pendleton in international waters. At least 6 unknown UASs made multiple flyovers and circle patterns around the ships, operating at various altitudes between 300 and 1,000 feet. All appeared to fly consistent patterns, northwest, east, south, without alteration of course, speed, and altitude. No weapons were observed.
Okay, so what's interesting about that is I brought that up to Shannon since he was in the Navy. I wanted to ask him his opinion prior to the live stream in regards to what he thought about that, because there is some suggestion that it might have been an unidentified aerial system or an unidentified aerial vehicle like a UAV or a drone And what did you say, Shannon?
It's not on the consumer market. I want to tell you that. I fly drones. I've flown most of DJI drones. I've owned most of the DJI drones. Hey, Mikey. And then let me just show you something, folks. This is one of the state-of-the-art drones. Does this look like anything that you just saw? No. What you're seeing is what whoever is responsible for that vehicle, they are not abiding by FAA regulation, navigation, lighting on their aircraft. Um, and whatever it is, I have no idea. They're how far are they out at sea? Because like this can go out maybe a couple of miles, but I'm telling you, it ain't no drone, folks. It ain't no consumer drone.
Yeah, from what I understand, they were way out in the ocean, not anywhere near land.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah, it had to have a launch point.
yeah,
But then
that
again, military
that or Rob and I have suggested it has a what's that? What's that? Your uranium isotope we were talking about, Rob, that can power one of these things possibly. They have these small generators even on Voyager 1 and 2. Even to this day, it works. So
Yeah,
maybe
it's
some
like
scientists have come up with something that it's actually nuclear powered, but it's not running off some type of electrical system, off a battery. Batteries are heavy, by the way. So whatever it is, it's advanced. It could possibly be man-made. I don't know. I've never
right,
seen anything like that,
right.
and I've got a lot of time out at sea. Never seen anything like that.
And that was recently too.
Yep.
That was 2019.
Yep.
So it was around the same time as other sightings. I think the ones with the green triangles were also sighted
Yep.
2019, weren't they?
Yeah, I want to tell you something else.
Yeah.
This ship right here, I just looked it up because I don't recognize the name. It's obviously what I was at Mayport Naval Station for 20 years, plus minus, Guantanamo and overseas for a year. But the thing is, that's that type of ship. I've never even seen it. This is a really wicked, badass, stealthy looking destroyer. You get a chance, Google the name of the ship.
Shannon, share your image uh, by the share button down below, and I'll put it on screen. Okay.
Okay.
USS
I've
Zumwalt.
never done this before.
You just go to share down
Oh,
below.
I gotcha. And put slides, and then I can just put things into there. Okay, shoot, yeah.
Stop, drop, and roll.
I know, right?
If they were nuclear, they would show up on sensors, though, on the ships, on satellites. There are a lot of redundant systems that the military has on their ships and on land-based that detect any kind of nuclear traces in any large amount whatsoever. They could have a nuclear pellet and it might not show up, but we just don't know how sensitive their technologies are. That'd probably be classified, I'm sure. But it's possible that they could be a nuclear pellet powered of some sort. But the likelihood of getting away with that without the public knowing at some point would be very slim. But yeah, also 2019 was the same time we had those drone swarms going over Colorado and all that too, in groups of
Right.
6 that were running grid patterns. So
Right.
can't lose sight of that either.
Right. So it could be man-made or it could be otherwise. We don't know.
Yeah.
Shannon, you have to put the
Yeah.
picture on your on one side of your screen and then share your screen. That's the only
Okay,
way
I'll
you
see if
can
I
put that
can figure
image up.
that out. All right.
If you can't do it, it's fine.
Okay. It's a learning lesson here. First time doing this. So I got this on one side of the screen. I'll pop this over on the other side, and we'll just see what happens here.
Yeah, just share that
Okay.
part of your screen.
Okay, here we go. Share screen.
It's got to come up on my side for me to bring it up.
I got you.
It's not.
Okay. You're going to have to Google it.
Yeah, if you want to look up the USS Zumwalt, spelled Z as in zoo, UMWALT, Zumwalt.
Yeah.
It is a highly advanced stealth destroyer, and it's kind of whitish in color. Take a look at it, and I would say marvel. It's one of our newest technologies, and it's fantastic. But it did spot these objects and film it, and it was just released by the government under the Freedom of Information Act. Okay, I do want to bring up something in regards to the government admitting that there is alien life. Currently, they won't come out and say the word alien. I mean, they are saying off-world vehicles or off-world technology, but they're not saying alien. And I've always thought it's because they're thinking, well, it could be interdimensional, it could be from a multiverse, it could be from space, it could be from under the oceans, it could be terrestrial. We can't label it because we don't know where they come from. But according to Edgar Mitchell, at the end of 1947, President Truman and the U.S. government admitted publicly that they had decided that the phenomena flying around in our skies was alien. So what I want to ask you is, why can't we say it now? Here's the video.
Can you tell us, Dr. Mitchell, exactly what the locals of Roswell told you, if you could remember specifics?
On the mic.
Yeah.
The essence was that the Roswell event was an alien craft, that it was not of this planet. That's the essence. What they really told me was their particular, each one had some particular part of it, like a sheriff's deputy was controlling traffic, but heard from what the other people, what was going on. The family of the undertaker told about the small coffins that were created for the alien bodies. And my Air Force family friend said, yes, he had heard the same thing from Major Brazel. Each one of them just told what their portion of the activity was all about. So putting it all together, the sum total was, yes, it was an alien spacecraft.
After I came back from space and was lecturing around and visiting back home, some of them came to me and pulled me aside and told me their story, that they had been shut up after the Roswell incident, and they were now older. They didn't want to take their story to the grave, and they wanted it out. And they figured I was trustworthy since I was a local boy and been to the moon. It would be okay if I took their story. So I promised them I wouldn't tell their names, but I would carry their story forward. A few years ago, 10 years ago, I did take the story to the Pentagon. I did have a meeting with high-level intelligence people as the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I did tell the story with a couple of other, with another naval officer and Stephen Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer, if you've heard that name, and told my story of what I knew about the Roswell incident, and subsequently had it confirmed that it was true, and that the individual who I told this with had tried to get into it to find out personally about the information, and he was rejected, as many others have been rejected, to have firsthand knowledge of the cover-up. In any event, however, the fact that the Roswell incident was real has been confirmed.
We have to remember that right after World War II, the Army Air Force was separated and became the Air Force, a separate branch of service, and that the OSS, which was the Office of Special Services, was disbanded and eventually became the CIA. So that here was a major military organization and a major intelligence organization totally in disarray, new founded, didn't know what they were doing after World War II, and not really reorganized yet. And as a result of that, the President Truman at that time convened a very high-level committee to examine this alien or UFO phenomenon. They did come to the conclusion that it was alien, and the military rightly came to the conclusion, if they're hostile, there's nothing we can do about it. Therefore, their choice was to deny it and to hush it up and create the National Security Act of 1947, which validated that deception and covered it up and allowed the group to go underground, as it were. And we've been living with that now for 50 years. It is really the beginning of the whole cover-up, the entire denial of this phenomenon. And the addition of dismissal, disinformation, misinformation to cloak and to discourage investigation, to misinform. It's just been continuous for many, many years now. Eventually it came away from the fear, I believe, of not being able to protect and do their duty to the notion of power and control, controlling the knowledge and the technology. And the group involved with that is still doing it. We have created our reality here, and we have created it right now rather badly, for it's not a sustainable reality. We have created, with our science and technology, instead of using it for the greater good, it's been captured by interest, greed, self-service, which is rife. And instead of using it, all of our technology and our brilliance and genius for greater good, we use it for self-service. And that's not going to work. It's important that we look at our civilization, our place in history, use our tools of science for greater understanding, to promote the greater good, and that's what it's all about.
I happen to be privileged enough to have be in on the fact that we have been visited on this planet, and the UFO phenomenon is real, although it's been covered up by our governments for quite a long time.
So that's Edgar Mitchell attesting to the fact that aliens are real, that back in the days of President Truman, they admitted to the fact that they were alien. But we can't do it today. So I'm going to ask Rob, why do you think that is, Rob?
But they won't say the word alien presently.
Right.
I think that they're taking Gary Nolan's approach. They've been briefed by a lot of their teammates, and I think they're going off what Jacques Vallée has taught them to use the scientific method. That it's too simplistic. They've got to go with what the data shows. And like he was talking about the avatars, that they seem to be biological entities that may be an artifact of some kind of organic higher intelligence here on the planet that may be manufacturing them to appear as an alien from outer space. But we have no data that I've ever heard of where they see them coming in from deep space into our orbit. That just never, I've never heard that story of a craft that they've ever observed, even coming from the moon to the Earth. So I think that they're holding judgment because they don't want to scare off politicians, academics, and all that. If they use the alien word, they're going to alienate a lot of people because they created such a bad stigma with that 75-year disinformation campaign. If they use the word alien, there's such a giggle factor. They still feel that they're going to lose their reputation, their funding, their jobs. So they're going to stick to the data and not be premature, not draw a conclusion, just stick with what the data says and not draw premature conclusions, I think is what they're trying to accomplish with this.
Right.
Perfectly said.
So they kind of feel like they might be castigated publicly if they come out and admit to that terminology. Although no one said that they're space aliens. Alien just
Right. They're
refers to the
alien to
fact that
us.
they're foreign. They're foreign to us.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, what do you think, Shannon?
I think you almost hit the nail on the head that whatever they are, they are here. They've been here, and the Rob is half right. Right. I believe the research that I've been doing for 5 years is just YouTube channel videos like everybody else. I think there was an incident where a craft actually um, went along with the Apollo moon, and it actually followed them.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
Yeah.
so halfway
Yeah.
right, maybe. So
But yeah, I forgot about those. But they did. I know they saw him on the moon, but I didn't remember if they escorted him from launch from the Earth to the moon, or vice versa.
yeah.
They
So
did,
yeah.
and the astronauts actually visually witnessed uh,
Mhm.
beings inside the craft that was alongside the orbiter, um, moving around. They actually saw them.
Yeah.
So that is a true statement, Shannon. Thank you
Yeah. They
for the update. Appreciate
yeah.
it.
Also, they because I don't have no evidence here. This is just hearsay stuff. Their nickname was Santa Claus. Am I right about that? That's their that was.
They use the term Santa Claus
Mhm.
and to refer to alien craft. Yes,
Yeah.
when the Apollo 11 went up, some ham radio operators overheard some communication between the ground and the orbiter and the astronauts, and supposedly they said, "Sir, we see Santa Claus." So that's where that
Mhm.
came into play. Are you familiar with that, Rob?
I remember that they blocked out 8 minutes or so of their comms, and a ham radio operator picked them up where they were talking about seeing craft sitting on the edge of the crater looking at them, even, or well, they were parked up there, like at a drive-in theater, I would assume, where they
Yeah,
felt like they were
Tranquility
there to
Crater.
observe.
Right,
Yeah.
Tranquility
So,
Crater along the edge. Yeah, and they
and
were
we,
huge.
yeah, yeah, that it shook them up because if you remember when they went up, they were all laughing and smiles, and when they came back, they were, in World War II, but they call it shocked, and now we call it PTSD. When they got back, it wasn't the PTSD of being scared because when they had those harrowing problems with barely getting the lander onto the moon and back, surviving something like that, they would have such an adrenaline rush coming back. They would be on the ultimate high of adrenaline. It's like surviving a flat out battle of epic proportions and surviving it. You're going to be so pumped up on adrenaline and the psych that you survived. You're going to be elated sometimes with that. These guys were
Mhm.
surprised out of their minds and just shell shocked and speechless, dead silent about it. Something they
Right,
saw was extremely profound that was beyond the pale of what they could rationally cope with emotionally.
right, exactly. And I still think it's going on, to be honest
Tim,
with
I'd
you.
like to add
Mm-hmm.
something to this. We're trying here in Florida. We're trying to launch a rocket at Cape Canaveral, and its mission is just to go around the moon and come back. We're going to be
Artemis
going back to
1.
the moon, right? Which was scrubbed. That's fine. It was a cloudy day. I couldn't see it from where I'm at, anyways. We're going back to the moon. Whether it's us, it's Chinese, Israel, we're going back to the moon. We're going to be seeing more better resolution images and video coming in. If I was a betting man, if there was what the astronauts were talking about on that crater, and which crater was it?
Tranquility Crater.
Tranquility. What happens? The footprints on the moon are still there to this day after 50 something years, right? Guess what else is going to be there? If something landed on that crater, on the edge of the rim of that crater, it is still there today. There's no weather on the moon. It didn't blow over. It's still there. So keep your eyes open. If you see a good picture, high resolution, you're going to see where the astronauts were. And if something really did happen on the edge of that crater, you're not going to see no footprints or a moon cart, moon vehicle going over there. It's going to be like a tripod and maybe some footsteps if there is something. So
Well,
keep your eyes out.
they said the ships kind of looked like large warships with the apparatus that you have for the bridge and stuff on top of it. These things were
Yeah.
huge. So if they made marks in the ground or in the surface dust, it's going to be like lines or gouges. It's not going to be a tripod like a typical saucer. And they also said the report that there were beings standing outside the ships when they saw the ships on the edge of the crater. So all I know is if they can prove that, that'd be great. But it's speculative at this time because the last moon mission that happened, a lot of images were scrubbed, meaning they smudged them out so you couldn't see anything, or they put in created images from a studio. So all I know is there is hope that we will get high quality images from the Artemis mission, but from past experience with NASA and the U.S. government, it could really be they'll get the images, but we won't.
Yeah. The Chinese one is a curiosity what it's actually doing on the moon and what it's going to do moving forward. It's still moving toward that cube that Lord Ludicrous was mentioning in the chat too. We move away from anything that looks interesting. They move toward it. Isn't that ironic?
Right. Isn't that ironic? Yeah, NASA's a public front, in my opinion. They do the bare minimum to go out into space and justify the funding. But I think that funding is going somewhere else. Because when I was in the service, I always noticed that when the government bought something, they didn't buy one, they bought 2, 3, 4. They always doubled up at the minimum. So if NASA is doing something as a public mission, then there might be another mission happening in the backgrounds that we don't even know about.
Yeah.
So, keep your ears to the ground, and perhaps we can find out something like that. I do have one last clip I'd like to play. It's with Christopher Mellon. He was interviewed recently on The Rising on the Hill, and check this out.
Last summer, the Director of National Intelligence released a bombshell report that rocked the UFO community. It confirmed that vehicles of unknown origin and capability are operating on a reoccurring basis with seeming impunity and in restricted U.S. military airspace to boot. The report also cited 144 incidents since 2004 in which the U.S. military detected these enigmatic aircraft. And while the government is seemingly taking the issue seriously, there's one military branch that has seemed to have gone AWOL on the issue, the United States Air Force. Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Christopher Mellon joins us now to discuss. Christopher, thank you so much for joining the show. So first of all, why do you think the Air Force is not really saying much about this? I mean, this seems to be pretty big news.
Yeah, it's baffling. And from the beginning, it's been the U.S. Navy. It's been Navy videos. It's been Navy reports. They've been very quiet. There's been a traditional stigma in the Air Force. I think that's part of it. But this lack of responsiveness to this degree is rather baffling.
And do you think, what do you think explains that silence? Is it just is there genuinely something that is being covered up, or is it a kind of bureaucratic, well, we don't have to be transparent with you, who are you, we're the government, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we don't know, but it does cause you to wonder if perhaps they're covering something up, because they released a report in 2015 identifying 1,800 incidents between 2010 and 2015 of unknown tracks of interest. Now this report comes forward and they seem to have virtually nothing to say and nothing to contribute. We know that F-15s have been scrambled. That's press reporting. We know that NORAD has hundreds of unknowns every year in the atmosphere and thousands in space. It's rather bizarre that they claim, the UAP task force, they're still trying to get information from the Air Force after all these months.
Hey, Christopher, when did you first get interested in this issue? What was it that got you into it?
I was a young boy and saw a home video that essentially a neighbor had made, and it showed a large UFO in broad daylight transiting through perfectly clear blue skies with just a few cumulus clouds. It went into one of those, disappeared, emerged out the other side, and it was stunning. I don't know what ever became of that, but that piqued my curiosity.
So as the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, I think us average people believe that people like you that have had these positions should know what these things are and should know whether or not we've been visited by aliens and if we've got some of the bodies hiding in Nevada. So what is it? I mean, really, I know it's kind of laughable, but I mean, that's what we think. So who would know what these phenomenon are? If there is somebody in the government, would it be the Air Force? Is that why they're mum about it? Do you think, well, they know what's going on here, or who would know?
That's a real possibility. And the sudden interest after a half a century of disinterest on the part of the American people, the American public, the sudden surge of interest from Congress has got them, it seems, in a very awkward position. And they seem to be struggling to determine what to say about it and how to say it and to whom.
And why? Like, why? Where does this struggle come from?
Undoubtedly, there are some classified sources that they're very skittish about, and so they have concerns about revealing that. I'm sure that's part of it. There's also traditional bureaucratic resistance in the Air Force to anything associated with this issue. For example, we have Air Force pilots flying in the same test ranges as Navy pilots. The Air Force pilots have better instrumentation. They're not reporting the UFOs that the Navy is seeing in the same places at the same general time.
When you say skittish classified sources, do you mean they're skittish about who these sources are and that they might not be reliable people, or that we're concerned about revealing who they are? Because they're sensitive.
I'm talking about technical sources and capabilities. So we have a massive space surveillance network and apparatus. And it defies belief to think that there have not been any unidentifieds tracked by that apparatus over such an extensive period of time. Certainly, if the Navy's had so many incidents, the Air Force must have had many, many more, because they're looking at far larger areas with far greater fidelity all over the world.
What has been the most?
Did we lose Tim?
I don't know. I think
I know he's having
the Air Force. I think he's right. They've got the most to lose with this.
Yep.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah, I accidentally got
big
abducted
secret
there. I don't know what happened. I lost my connection real quick. So, anyways, yeah, we lost Tim. Yeah, we did. But I'm back, Xavier. I could honestly tell you that the interview was stating that there is alien technology and they know it.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Mellon knows it.
Of course.
They're trying to bring it out. I mean, there's, like he said, there's thousands of objects being tracked in space. Where they're coming from, who knows? That's what he said by our NASA's sensing apparatus. He said that.
We got to remember, though, they put in the 2023 bill a permanent office to sort out and only investigate non-human UAP. That's it. And if they find out it's terrestrial, it gets thrown into another box, just like Havana syndrome. If it's an adversarial, it gets thrown out, and they stay on task with non-human investigations. So they've already settled it. They've already settled that this is not human with those bills and those laws. And they didn't form those in the vacuum with hearsay. that they had to go on credible evidence to frame the questions that they did to establish the hearings and to write those bills. They already had to have the answers before they even wrote them, or they wouldn't have done that. You don't put that much money out there in a bold statement like that without knowing the facts first up front, that there is something there. That's, I think, why
Right.
NASA is spending $100,000 to investigate. I think it's their way of saving face, where they can come out and say, well, we've studied it. We've taken a fresh look with fresh leadership, and guess what? We found something here that's worth investigating. So now we're going to get on it, which is good. But the Air Force needs to step up, because I do believe if any military force on the planet, they need anybody who, what we're dealing with, where, what numbers and all that. But I also think on the flip side, our adversaries don't know what's actually ours and what's alien technologies. And I think that bluff scares them to some degree, that gives them some hesitancy. So they're, I think, wanting to balance disclosure, but also not allowing that bluff to fall to where they don't know what's human skunk work technologies and what's truly non-human technologies, and not to get froggy about it, because they won't ever know the difference, according to our Air Force, to give that away.
Right. You know what's interesting is in a manual, an instruction manual at the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, they have a chapter in there on how to approach and deal with alien contact. So if you think if they would have that actual manual, that they already know, and they've known for a long time.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, why would they instruct soldiers on how to deal with a first-hand encounter? They wouldn't even mess with it. They wouldn't even spend the money for the paper to write it on. So that's been out there for years. And my sister, who was married to a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force and lived on the Air Academy in Colorado Springs, told me point blank that that information from the manual was classified to the outside world until only recently. So now people know that soldiers, airmen in the Air Force have been taught for a long time how to deal with a first-hand encounter. What do you think about that, Rob?
I completely agree. And if I went back and reread the Condon report, and the guy that wrote it said that, that there were a lot of cases that he could not verify that were human technologies or could be explained with mundane explanations. But he left it distinct that there was one case in there that there was no earthly explanation. And I think I've talked about this recently. That was the case in England, where they saw multiple craft coming out off the sea toward a base with multiple sensors on the base, radar systems, pilots, people on the ground, boats in the water. There was too much corroborating evidence that excluded that it could have been any terrestrial human-made craft, and it definitely wasn't weather inversions and stuff. That's the one case they couldn't control the information on. It was too big. They couldn't contain it. And he said that one wasn't human. It's in the Condon report. So he acknowledged there's non-human technology out there in that from 1969.
Right. And it was his job to discredit the information that was out there. In fact, that's why he was hired. But he did find proof that some of them were unprovable, to be man-made or a natural phenomenon. It turned out that they were actually unsolvable phenomena or vehicles. And the one you're talking about, he said that it had to have been some type of craft. I remember that. Yep.
Multiple
Shannon.
craft.
Yeah, multiple. So what do you think of all this, Shannon?
I think that I am very fortunate to have a guy like Rob on my team, and I'm glad he's on your team as well, because you give this guy some rest, you give him some coffee, you wind him up, and he just carries the whole show. This guy is so knowledgeable. Yeah. Now, when it comes to the story, it only takes one one story to be true in order for this whole thing to blow open. Okay. I don't know how long I've been studying this, 5, 6 years, whatever. And now I'm on YouTube, right? Last person in the world to be on YouTube having a show about this. But here I am. And as an investigator, I'm looking at all these witnesses. And we have put people to death with less evidence. Okay. And
right, we have.
You know, and it's just, okay, all these, let's just say 99% of it's baloney. My God, this 1%, that's it. That's it. Thanks for coming and, you know, and joining us today. The show's over because, you know, it's we come to the conclusion that there is life.
Right.
But we all know that anyways, and we don't have any proof. I can right here, I have the proof. But it's just these stories, these what we call in the investigative field, these are voluntary statements. Okay.
Right.
And when these people are talking about their experiences, I've noticed that they are reliving it every time they retell it. And that's how I believe that they are telling the truth, is because they relive it.
Right. And or they believe it to the point of it becoming real for them.
Yeah.
And then
Even though they know it's
and then
phony.
for us. Sometimes people spread lies to where it appears to be real, but you really have to have a discerning ear, a discerning eye, and you have to base it on, like Shannon said, chain of data. That's exactly it.
In fact, Tim, Rob and I know where we're going with this. We've kind of we've uncovered one of these lies, haven't we, Rob? And we're not ready to come forward with the information yet. But the floor is yours, Rob. Put you on the
let's
spot.
just say people that their job was to lie for the Air Force are still telling whoppers, but I don't know why. I just know factually they are about having discussions with certain people that we know that are not true. So at some point I'm going to contact him and ask him to just kind of not do any more damage to that person's reputation by claiming the things that he has on Spaces, because people do record those and they get around to people, they ask questions, and the truth will come out. And I'm not happy with this person. I like him, but I'm not happy about him saying the things he did about friends of ours. And I'm gonna have to say something to him about it.
Okay. One thing I want to say here is we got a comment from the chat room. If you need to stream but have stuff to do, have Rob on, ask a deep question, then get to doing your stuff, because Rob will go on until you stop him. I've experienced that phenomenon, but Rob is full of a huge amount of knowledge, and he tries to get it out before he forgets
Bursting
it.
out of the seams there.
Before he forgets it, and I really appreciate that content that he provides.
It's just hard.
Go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say it's hard to know where to stop when you start explaining something, because people, you don't know what they know or don't, so you try and lay a good foundation of it. Yeah, so I just, I start from the beginning, and then I keep remembering more data, and it just keeps rolling. So
It's not. And one thing, Tim, when in my background and my experiences, liars, they lie, unfortunately.
Right. Exactly. Yep. And they make it their life's work too. And I know that all three of us are dealing with certain people online or on social media that do that, and we're trying to toe the line and not bash anyone and stay true to the truth, and that's what we're doing. So I'm going to go around the panel and ask Rob and Shannon if they have any last thoughts, and then we're going to close this up for the evening. Rob, any last thoughts?
No, just it'll get back to that person, I'm sure. Just tell whatever stories you need to tell, but leave Lou alone. He's got enough problems trying to trying to dispel false accusations that are coming at him from the Pentagon, things like that. He doesn't need people that are not so credible claiming to have interactions with him that were positive and then sullying his name because of it. That's just not cool. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay, Shannon. Any last thoughts on the live stream tonight?
Yeah, I would just tell your audience that when it comes to researching the subject, just look at the individuals who are putting out the information and ask yourself, what is their business model? Why are they doing what they're doing? Are they doing it so that they'll have you go onto another website in order to subscribe, in order to watch something, in order to go on field trips, and they're just raking in the dough? So you might want to think maybe that's the reason why they're doing what they're doing, and they might not be honest. Maybe, maybe quite, yeah. And look at those. Yeah, look at those. Like, I'll go ahead and pat. We don't make a dime doing what we're doing. All the money that does come in, 100% goes to charity. All the monetization and the super chats, 100% on our channel goes to
charity.
My charity event. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's one.
Right. Go ahead, Rob.
One thing I remember what you were talking about a minute ago, the secondary information that's out of these scientific investigations of people that have been in the top secret programs, like Nolan, Hal Puthoff, and some that aren't in the top secret ones that want to be, like Eric Weinstein. Something I've heard Hal, Eric, and now Gary say was that the secondary information evidence is so overwhelming that you can draw a base conclusion from all the secondary evidence that there is no. He said, Gary said he's going to remain a skeptic until he gets actual bodies or something in front of him to prove it. But he's the third scientist now that I've heard in just a few months that has came out and said that if you weigh all the secondary information, it's an avalanche. It would be enough to convict in a criminal court, not just civil. So, which that part's my add-on, but that seems to be a common talking line that is going through that community now, and it's true. We don't have anything in the public arena that is evidence of something definitive to hang our hat on, but the secondary evidence is overwhelming in totality.
Right. Hey, Shannon, I'm going to say this to you. Put your link for your charity fundraiser in the chat room again, please. And I will remind people what it is. It's Shannon Scott's annual Vets and Vets for Wounded Vets and Pets fundraiser. So it looks like we may have lost Shannon there for a second.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll come back. Well, I was gone too, so things happen. Okay, and we'll wait for Shannon here. The other thing I want to say is I want to thank everybody who participated online. I want to thank everyone who came to the live stream this evening. We had a lot of things to talk about, and we touched on all of them. The next time these guys come on, we're going to dig into ancient civilizations a little bit because Rob is very skilled in that area. And we're going to talk about some things that I find interesting and Rob finds interesting as well. And so these guys will reappear on UFO Man in the future. So keep your ear to the ground and wait for our notification. Thanks to everybody in the chat room and from Rob and myself and from the missing Shannon Scott. Good evening.